record. All right, so just so everybody know. So welcome everyone to our ARE Strategic Committee session on project management. Again, my name is Joel Mieses. I am currently the president of the Virginia chapter of NOMA here. I'm based here out of Richmond. Like I said, we are a statewide chapter all over the state, but I mean, a lot of us are here in the Central Virginia area. I was currently the vice president a few weeks ago, but then our president is relocating to North Carolina, so I assumed the position of president. I ask that you keep your mouth, your mics muted. However, if you have a question, you don't have to wait till the end. Just feel free to interrupt me. I don't mind, because I know we via Zoom, so I might not see a little question symbol being raised. So you can go ahead and speak out, and if you have a question on something, and that way I can answer. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and we can go ahead and get started on the question with the presentation. Can everybody see my screen? All right, so great. So like I said, with this project management area discussion session, and I know based on the responses I got from the question, the registration forms, I know some of you are planning on taking this exam in the near future. Some of you have already taken it, some of you have not taken it. So before we get to the questions, I'm gonna go do a brief introduction to the exam for some of you who have not taken it. If you have taken the exam before, just bear with us for a few minutes. I'm going to get to that portion real quickly, just giving some basic information about the exam, the area in general, and then we're going to get to the questions and discussion on that. Again, this presentation is brought to you the Virginia chapter of NOMA. We've been around since 2020, chartered at the 2020 NOMA conference. And we strive to promote architecture to minorities all over the country. We are here obviously focused in Virginia, and getting more people licensed. So this is what we're going to be covering. We're going to give a brief introduction to the ARE exam, talk about the exam in general, and then we're going to get to the exam questions, and then exam content, and we're going to talk about the questions or items, and then we're going to briefly talk about resources that you can use to study, to study for this exam. All right. So everything I'm going to talk about. So let's talk about the exam itself. So everything that I'm going to talk to you about today can be found in the NCARB's website, mcar.org. So I know sometimes people don't have time to go read that stuff, but everything I'm going to be sharing with you is coming from there. That's in my primary source as far as just the exam itself. Like I said, they have these two guidelines. They got the ARE 5.0 exam guidelines in general, and they got the actual PjM guidelines. You can find their handbooks. You can find on their website, and very, very helpful. So use those resources. Again, about the exam appointments are available all year. They used to use their Prometrics Testing Center, but they're switching to PSI. So that's a thing that's happening, I believe, this month or next month, pretty soon. All exam costs $235 per division. I said once you pass an exam, you have 5 years until that exam expires. So make sure you have to pass all the divisions within 5 years after you pass your first exams, and you have to retake any failed division within 60 days. That just stuff about the exam in general, right? So if you didn't know that, you now know that. I'm pretty sure most of you know it. The exam questions or items, as they call it, is multiple choice. Check all that apply. Fill in the blank. Quantitative. That means you put in numbers. They're not going to ask you to spell or write in a word, but quantitative fill in the blank, which is numbers 5.0, 3.0, 3.1, 5.1, 5, 6, stuff like that. Hotspots, where you pick a spot, they give you a detail. You pick a spot of the item, and drag in place where you have to basically and put the items in the right location. So that's the 5 types of items, just in case you didn't know that. Again, if you know this stuff, just bear with me. All right, let's talk about the actual project management exam. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this, slow down a little bit. The exam content, again, this division, which is something that a lot of us, in our early years don't do much. we don't learn too much about this in school, about the project management. We merely focus and design a lot. And typically when you get into a firm, you're not going to be doing a lot of project management. You're going to be doing a lot of, the technical stuff, drafting and putting, construction documents together. But you don't know too much. Typically the principals or the project management are the ones that are doing most of the management of the project. So, if you get a chance to get that experience at your firm, I suggest that you ask your boss to give you that, to let you in those meetings that are important. That way you can get some actual experience. Because a lot of us, I know from experience, I did not get that experience. Most of the experience I got on that was from books, not from actual project management. So to get a chance and your firm is willing to work with you, ask them to let you in those meetings, client meetings, and see the contracts. That way you have some hands-on experience on it. So this division, according to NCAR, will assess objectives related to the management of architectural projects, including organizing principles, contract management, and consultant management, right? So it focuses on related office standards, development of project teams, and overall control of client fee and risk management. So again, a lot of stuff that we in our early careers don't do much. I know some of you may be older and have experience in that, which is great. You will do much better in this exam than most people who are taking the exam at the beginning. So so I encourage you again, your firm to give you that experience if they can. All right, so Ashley, thank you for joining us. We kind of like right in the middle of the exam, so just follow along here. Anyway, so the exam content, the exam itself, you have 75 items, right? Just in case you didn't know, only 68 out of those items count, right? So 7 of those items are what is called test questions. Or test items. You're not gonna know what those items are, so you gotta try to answer each item as if he counted, right? And the items are used for they kind of like before they put an item on an actual test and make it official, they kind of like try it out and see how people do and see that if that question or item makes it. So only 68 out of the 75 that you have to answer count. But like I said, you don't know which of those 7 do not count. So your best bet is to try to answer every question. When I was taking the exam, sometimes I got some items. I'm like, man, I know this has to be a fake or test item. There's no way they're going to be asking me that question on the test. But like I said, you never know. 3 hours, in 30 minutes if you go to the testing center. I know right now you can do it. You can do it at home. I think they're doing the online proctoring. So like I said, 75 is one of the shorter exams. Supposed to the PDD and PPP, which are PPD, which are 120. So that's, and now the makeup of the test. So you got 5 sections within the exam, right? If you weren't aware, and right here you see the breakdown of what the percentage of those are, right? So resource management, 5 to 10 items, for 7 to 13%. Section 2, project work planning. Section 3, contracts, right? Which is, that's a big chunk, 25 to 31% of the test is that's the biggest section of this exam, right? So most of the questions or items, I want to refer to them as questions. I'm tired of saying items. We are saying items, but most of the questions are going to come from there. Project execution, right? So that's the next. That's another big section. 17 to 23% of that is going to be based on those types of questions. And then project quality control, that's 19 to 25%, or 14 to 19, between 14 and 19 questions are going to be related to those. So, so I mean, when you're trying to study, it's kind of hard to like study by those sections. You just study all the content, and I mean, when I was doing it, I wasn't thinking about breaking it down section by section. However, if you do fail an exam, they would tell you which of the sections you did. They have this, 1 through 4, kind of like ranking scale that tells you, if you did really well in that section, if you did really bad, right? So they don't give you a score, an actual number, percentage, but if you do fail, you kind of get an understanding of which area you have to focus on. But it's kind of hard to find study materials that break this stuff just like this. Contract is obviously easy because you can just focus on contract, but these other ones are kind of like very, very resource management, like, and project work planning. You kind of have to focus, and it's kind of hard to, strategically focus on something when you're studying. Sometimes they don't make it very easy. It's very open. But like I said, this is a guide for, especially if you fail, to kind of just where do you do well and where you not do well. Any questions on the content of the exam itself? Okay, so let's keep going. So, this right here kind of tells you what each area, the definition of each area. So research management, it's basically about, after you sign the contract, what happens. Contracts, self-explanatory. You will analyze the contract and establish relationships between the architect, owner, contractor, and consultant. It's a very important relationship. A lot of the questions will come from that. In project work planning, you will evaluate effective ways to develop and communicate a work plan with the assembled project team in order to complete the project, right? So kind of getting your team together, your consultants, even people within your own team to get the project done. Project execution, it's not about the design related decisions, but rather necessary ministerial procedures throughout the project, right? So stuff to make this project work. The time, the people who you are assigned to it, not necessarily the design related stuff, but the stuff that make the project move forward. And then project quality control, is the analysis the methods and procedures and review process in order to maintain the standard of care, right? So the reviews, before anything goes out, who reviews the project, who assesses the project, who completes the red lines, because when you get something done, you cannot just let it go out into the street without somebody looking at it and make sure it's to the standard of care, standard of practice that the firm has established, right? To make sure it can go out and be well presented. So that's kind of the content of this exam. So a lot of, like I said, management, and like I said, most of us in the early years are not exposed to some of this stuff. That's some of you might have, but it's basically dealing with not so much of the design or the great details of detailing or engineering, but the business side of the practice, right? The business side, getting the project done, the client relationships, and the contracts, which is kind of lawyer speak. We're not lawyers, but obviously it's a business, so we have to run it like a business. So that's why. Any questions on the actual content of the exam? Anybody have any questions on any of the sections? All right, so it's self-explanatory. Like I said, all this stuff is found in the NCARB handbook for this exam. You can go read it in more detail, and they also give you sample questions as well. All right, so let's actually get to the actual questions that were sent out to you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the questions, and I'm going to read the choices, and then I'm going to give you the answer, and then I'm going to tell you why the answer is what it is, right? So, and then that will give you can check if you did the exam yourself. If you took the questions yourself, you can check against your own answers to see how many you got right. Or if you have a question about it, please ask. If you think my answer was incorrect, we can also discuss that too. I got the answers to the test, but if you want to challenge it, that's perfectly fine. But like I said, I'm going to go ahead and get going. And like I said, I will briefly discuss why the answer is the right, the answer that I have is the right answer, and a little bit on it. So we spend a few minutes on each question. And then, like I said, we can discuss it if you have any answers. Like I said, feel free to speak out if you have any questions, okay? All right, so let's go to number one. So number one says, a local bank has a budget of $30 million, right, to construct a new main office. The bank wants to use contractors who are customers of the bank, right? However, now the bank contractors' customers can bond the entire amount of the contract, right? They cannot bond it. They cannot insure it, right? That's what that means. Which of the following delivery methods would best be suited to meeting the bank contractor's selection goal? So the questions are design build. So these are all design building construction delivery methods, right? Design build, which is traditional design build, and then you got fast track, and you got typically that design build, which is not one of the options here. Then C is multiple prime contractors, and you got D, additive change order, right? So the right answer for the question is C, multiple prime contractors. And the reason that is because, you know, the question says that, you know, the statement right says that none of the bank contractors can bond the entire project, right? They cannot insure. So it's to the best interest of the bank to use multiple contractors, you know, that can handle each phase of the project. So you can, you know, when you're designing a building, typically only one general contractor is the one that's in charge of the entire thing. But sometimes when you have a complex project, you know, and you have a project, for example, that is a very specialized project, like for example, like a laboratory or something like that, where a specific contractor might not have experience in a specific area of that building, then the owner can have one contractor do one specific part of the project as prime, and then they can hire another contractor who will be responsible for another part of the project. You know, so in this case, you know, it's in the best interest of the client to use multiple in order for them to get, you know, the whole project insured, right? So it says the bank wants to use contractors who are customers to the bank. However, now they're GC customers, right? Have enough to bond the entire thing, but they want to keep it, you know, solely. It's a private project. So they want to keep it solely to their customers who are general contractors, but none of them can do it by themselves. So it's in their best interest to hire, you know, the only choice really, if they want to go with just their customers, is to have several other customers who are general contractors bid on it, and they can all act. They can be assigned different phases of the project, so that it can be done that way. And that's because, you know, that's kind of what they want to do. Typically, it's easy to just have one contractor, but because they want to be restricted to just their customers who are GCs, then they have to do it this way. All right. Any questions on that? Any discussion points on that? All right. Seeing no questions, everybody understand that? All right. So hopefully, let me check the chat here. If you have any questions, you can also put them in the chat as well, you know. All right, so let's go to number 2. So number 2, it says the contractor for a project submits to the architect shop drawings that contain deviations from the contract documents not noted as deviations from the shop drawings. The drawings are then approved and returned to the contractor by the architect. According to Aia Document A201, which of the following is allowed or required as a result of deviations from the contract documents, right? So it says A, the contractor assumes responsibility from the deviations. B, the contractor is allowed to build according to the approved shop drawings contain deviations. C, the architect assumes responsibility for the deviations from the contract documents because the architect approved the shop drawings, right? And then D, the owner must be informed of all deviations from all the observations of the contract document. Right. So the correct answer to this question is C. The architect assumes responsibility for deviations from the contract documents because the architect approved the shop drawings. So, you know, like I said, shop drawings are sent, you know, are typically sent by the whoever the producer of, let's say that stair rail or stairs, or I'm just picking random subcontractors here. You know, typically stuff that requires shop drawings. Let's say like a stair. You know, you have a stair in the building. They will typically have a fabricator. A stair fabricator will send shop drawings to the contractor based on what they see in the construction documents. You know, in the drawings, the contractor will review those. They will approve them and then send them over to the architecture for approval. Now, if the architect sees deviations from the contract documents, it is the responsibility of the architect to catch that and know, like, hey, you are, you know, the architect is responsible for the construction documents. The architect is responsible for the contractor to follow the construction documents. If there's a deviation from the construction documents and the architect approves it, then the architect is then taking responsibility, because technically the architect is supposed to say, hey, red flag that, like, hey, you're deviating from the documents. there might be a reason for that, right? So, then because there might be a reason, then the architect is assuming responsibility if they approve the shop drawings with the change. So so typically the architect will reflect that and mark it and say no, you must follow don't deviate, follow the contract documents, and the GC must follow as well. Unless there's a reason, then you have to submit a change order and all that stuff, which is a whole different process. But if you, as an architect, note something, a deviation, and you approve it, then we're doing that with full knowledge. So, any questions on that one? All right, yeah, none. All right, so we're gonna go ahead to number 3. So it says shop drawings for dormitory windows have been prepared by the manufacturer, checked by a local distributor, and reviewed and approved by the contractor and architect. Right, so everybody approved these things. So during installation, it's discovered that the quantity of windows, as indicated in the shop drawings, is one less. That's what is shown in the contract documents. So in this case, who is responsible for this discrepancy? So everybody reviewed it and approved it. And then when it started to install these things, the amount of windows that showed up on site is one less than the amount of rough openings that's in the building. So who's responsible for this? So it's the architect, the manufacturer who's making the windows, the distributor, or the contractor. So in this case, the answer will be D, the contractor. Why? Because this is happening on the construction site, right? So the contractor is responsible for means and methods of construction, right? So like I said, I mentioned earlier, the contractor is supposed to review the shop drawings before they send to the architect. So the contractor, since the contractor is responsible for means and methods, of construction, that means, that includes actual numbers. So if you have 10 rough openings for windows and the shop drawings is only showing 9 quantity, that affects cost, that affects a lot of things. So the contractor is supposed to catch that. And like, hey, we're supposed to have 10 windows here, not 9. That affects the quantity, that affects the price. So we're supposed to, the contractor is supposed to catch that before it gets sent to the architect, because the contractor is responsible for what happens on the site. And they're also responsible for the quantity of items that show up on the site. And also affects, their pricing, right? Because 9 windows is obviously less than 10 windows. I'm just giving a number here. So the contractor should have caught that before it got sent to the architect. Now the architect is just making sure that the windows comply with the construction documents as far as design, and make sure that the windows are casement windows instead of awning windows. I don't know, something like that. So that's what the architect is checking for. They're not necessarily checking for the quantity of windows are in the actual building. That's supposed to be flipped to the contractor first. So that's why it's the contractor, not the architect. That's supposed to like the other question. Any questions on that one? Anybody have anything to add on that? All right, so we're gonna go ahead and move to number 4 then. Making good time here. So it says right here, number 4, in accordance with Aia Documents A201 general conditions, the obligation to pay or see the payment of money to subcontractors, the set as may otherwise be required by law rests with who? The contractor, the contractor alone, the architect alone, the owner alone, the contractor, the architect, the owner, right? So obviously the question to this one is A, the contractor. So the contractor is responsible for paying his subcontractors, right? The contractor the subcontractor does not have a contract with the owner or with the architect. The subcontractor has a contract with the GC, or the general contractor. So the general contractor is responsible for paying the subcontractors accordingly, right? If the GC does not pay the subcontractor, then a subcontractor will put a lien on the building, right? So that's where you typically have a retainage, in the contract. And you also have bonds in different insurance bonds, just to prevent that from those things from happening. So sometimes the GC has been apprised that the GC goes bankrupt, or the GC just walks out on the project, and then you have all these subcontractors who have done work, and now they haven't gotten paid, and they're definitely going to start putting liens against the owner, and then the owner cannot get a building permit, or cannot get his not building permit, cannot get a occupancy on his or her building, because the contractor did not pay the subcontractors. So that's why typically we have retainage, where a certain percentage of the amount paid to the GC gets retained by the owner to cover such thing. And then you also have different types of bonds that cover those things from happening, right? So you have bonds against liens, you got bonds. So then the insurance can go and put a claim with the bond insurance, and then they will get paid, and then they can pay the subcontractors. So it is just to make things easier, just be simpler for the contractor or the GC to pay its subcontractors accordingly. That way, no liens are put against the building, because essentially a lien means that the subcontractor owns a small portion of that building now, and so you as an owner do not want to have that. You cannot move forward with having liens on your building. So that's why bonds and insurance bonds and retainage is put in place for. All right. Any questions on that? So you might see a question like this, because I say it's very common. It's something that you as an architect should know, especially the project management. The different types of insurances that are required, and who's responsible for paying who. The owner pays the GC, and the GC pays everybody else. All right, number 5. Which of the following methods of bidding is required on most projects for which government funds are to be used, right? That means public projects. Some of you work on private projects, individual owners, and some of you do public projects, meaning, schools, I'm just thinking schools is the one that comes to my head right now, but libraries, stuff that's used for general public, that's used with taxpayer money. So which of the government funds are to be used? So it's direct. So when you bidding the project, right? When you're bidding the project to contractors, can you do a direct, B, negotiated, C, invited, and D, public? The answer on this one is D, public, right? So whenever you're using taxpayer money in order to prevent fraud or to prevent preferential treatment, you have to make it public. That means back in the day, I say back in the day before like the internet, you would like publish it on newspapers. You would publish it on, you would post it in different places. That way, or you put it, you will post it like in printing rooms. That when you have frequent contractors going in, blueprint rooms, and the contractors can go in and they can see the bids. So you put it, you make it available. Now these days, you put it on the internet. You issue an RFP, and then you send it out to the general public, social media. You can contractors have subscriptions to these websites where public projects are put in. In any case, since the taxpayers' money, they have to put it out to the general public for a certain period, whatever that period may be, according to whatever local laws you have said, either 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever it is. But the main thing is that you have to make it available for anybody and that's qualified to bid, right? Some municipalities, they have a certain threshold, like projects above a certain amount of money have to be bid, right? And then some municipalities have what is called, pre-qualified contractors already in their books, right? So every year these contractors submit, their qualifications and they get approved. And so the city can just directly pick from that list, so they're already pre-qualified, right? So that's another thing that cities do and municipalities do. But that's typically on smaller projects, like, they have this, they set certain thresholds of that. They must say anything above 5,000 or 10,000 or 20,000 or whatever it is, because you don't want to be bidding on every little thing. If it's a small little project, that can be done relatively easy, they can just go to the list of qualified contractors already in their list, and they can just hand out the project to that person, or they can have those group of pre-qualified bidders of contractors bid on a project. But if it's like a big, huge, like library is like $10 million or something like that, then the public might have interest when it's that much money. Then you definitely want to make it available to the public. If it's a private project, then the owner can go. You can go with direct. You can just ask a contractor directly to do the work, or you can invite a group of contractors to bid. If it's a private project, and you invite, typically the architect might assist you. You invite 3 or 4 qualified contractors that in the area, and you invite them to bid, and they want to bid, they bid. They have experience and they bid. But typically when it's a project, like it's a university project, public university, city government, county government, state government, even federal, they typically have to make it available for anyone. So it's public. Any question on that? On those? All right, no question. All right, so you guys are getting it, or I'm either doing a good job, or you guys get it. All right, so number 6. Okay, so number 6, during the construction phase, the owner and the contractor have a difference of opinion about the quality of the erection of the steel frame and the progress of work. Which action should the owner and contractor take to resolve their difference, right? So that's a dispute, in a project, right? Between the owner and the contractor, right? So what are they gonna, so they have to turn to somebody to solve that dispute. They can do A, stop the project, B, request arbitration, C, consult with a steel fabricator, or B, request architect interpretation. So this is like your first move, right? So the answer would be D, right? So if there's a dispute between the owner and the contractor for whatever reason, they're, according to the A201, their first line of I guess mediation is to go to the architect, right? The architect is supposed to be playing, being a mediator between them, right? If they can, if the architect cannot solve the situation, then you go to arbitration, where you go get a separate arbitrator. They typically charge a fee. They're recognized by the state or whatever. So they're not just any regular person. They typically have to do that for a living or whatever. Arbitrate things. And then the arbitrator would then decide. But for something small like this, you're not going to go to an arbitrator. When it's like a big dispute, typically involving money and who gets paid, that's when you go to the arbitrator. And then lastly, if the arbitrator cannot solve it, then you go to litigation, which is the courts. So obviously the courts take more time. So each subsequent one takes more time. Obviously, if you have a dispute, you go to the architect. That's the easiest thing. The architect can just tell you right there, and you both can agree or disagree. If the contractor cannot agree, then you go to arbitration, which takes more time and it's more costly. You hire an arbitrator. The arbitrator looks at the case, and he or she decides. If that's not a go, then you go to litigation, where somebody is suing somebody. Obviously, that costs more money, takes more time, so nobody wants to. That's the last step. Last thing you want to do. Obviously, a lot of times you have no choice but to go to litigation, because it's a mess. I've spoken with lawyers who represent architects and represent construction firms, and that's all they do. That's their lawyers who work in the construction industry, representing clients, representing contractors, representing engineers, representing architects, because they're getting sued. Somebody's suing somebody for something, or and they have no choice but to go to litigation, and then these lawyers have to get involved. Every time you get involved, lawyers and go to litigation just costs a lot more money. So you'd rather just but something small like this, I think the architect can probably resolve it, right? The architect can go to the construction documents or based on his or her experience and just say, hey, this is the best way to go. And then, the owner can say, okay, let's do it that way. Or the GC can say, okay, let's do it that way. Or arbitration. Like I said, litigation is what you want to admit. Litigation is the last step. Arbitration. So that's what it kind of like the order of sequence in the according to the A1 the AIA documents, right? Architect, arbitration, then litigation. All right. So it can be mediated. Any questions on that one? All right, hearing none, we're almost done, guys. We're doing great on time. It's 12:40. We got 20 minutes to do 3 questions. So which of the following should be included in the written contract for architectural services, right? So now when it's architectural services, check the 3 that apply. And you're going to see a lot of the questions or items on the exam is going to be multiple. Check the 3 that apply. Obviously, if you get one wrong, you get the whole question wrong. So you have to, not most of the questions aren't like this, but a lot of questions are like that. So you have to, think about your answers and just kind of eliminate the ones that you think are obviously not right. So start with those and then just go from there. Because I might ask you to choose 4 out of 6. I might ask you to choose 3 out of 5. They're never going to make it 3 out of 4. Like when one is obviously the wrong one, they're going to give you 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 6 or something like that, right? Or 2 out of 4. They always give you 2 wrong ones. And anyway, but so we're talking about your typical so this stuff that's out of included with your basic architectural services, right? So A, means and methods to be used in construction. B, programming services. C, description of reimbursable expenses, right? D, name of general contractor. E, insurance requirements, and F, additional services that might be provided by the architect, right? So this stuff needs to be in the contract when you go sign, right? Your contract between architect and owner. So A is obviously means and methods of construction. That's not the architect's job, so that's out, right? So that's not one of the right answers. Because like I said, means and methods to be used in construction is to be handled by the contractor, not by the architect. So programming services, that's typically not included in your basic services for architects. However, some owners do require it or do want that, but that is an extra expense. That's something that's not part of the basic services of an architect, right? So that's if you want to do programming, the architect do programming, that has to be this for the AIA documents, right? So if you have your own documents in your firm, you don't use, so it's different. But if you use the AIA documents, that you're gonna have to add that as an additional service. So the answer is gonna give you the answers is C, reimbursable expenses, right? You got that stuff you have to write in the contract. Make sure that the owner knows that, because there's a lot of reimbursable expenses, travel, printing, things outside of like your typical design fee, right? And then E, insurance requirements, right? That stuff has to be written in the contract, right? The old insurance requirements that are required by the architect. Typically the owner might require some, and the architect might require some by the owner. And then F, any additional services that might be provided by the architect need to be there. So the answers are D, E, and F. And F, the additional services, it will include that programming that I talked about, B. So additional services would be something like programming, or like if you have to do a presentation to the city or whatever, you have to provide renderings, or you want to issue renderings to the public, right? Those are additional services that need to be added to the project, right? Because the contract, the architect is supposed to just be preparing that, you typically hire an architect to provide you with construction documents to be used for bidding and construction and working drawings, right? A rendering is not a working drawing. A rendering is a presentation drawing, right? So that's something that could be used for like public interest, right? You want to let the public see what the new church or new building is going to look like. So that's an additional service. That's not technically part of the basic service. Now, some architects might include that in their services already in a contract because that's kind of what they do, but traditionally that's not. So the answer to this one is C. And then reimbursable expenses, like I said, there's a lot of stuff that a lot of expenses that might that you definitely want to be hitting an owner with a surprise expense that he or she was not expecting, right? So you would definitely want to, put those out in the contract. Then that way, when you do invoice for those reimbursable expenses, the owner is understanding and it's in the contract, and they know they can dispute it, right? Travel, you definitely have some, some different travel, travel to the site, or during the CA, construction administration phase of the project, that you have to travel certain times. You got administrate, you got different reimbursable expenses. Any question on that one? Like I said, those definitely need to be included in there. All right, so that's that. So let's go to number 8. The bids for a new office building exceed the owner's budget, right? According to AIA document B101, the owner might pursue which of the following actions regarding the budget and scope. And this check before that apply. Again, it's another one, multiple choice, multiple answer question that you're going to see in the exam quite a bit. And here they give you, again, six choices to pick 4, right? So I'm going to give you the 4 choices, question 7, I'm sorry, question 7 was C, E, and F. Yeah, that was, I'm sorry, that was the answer to question 7, C, E, and F. And here for question A, the answers are the first 4, A, B, C, and D, right? So so these are the things that happen when you design a building and you in the traditional delivery method, which is design bid build, right? Design bid build. You design the building, you design the project, and then you send it to you pick the qualified contractors, you send it to bid, and all the bids come back and it's over the budget that the architect provided an estimate for, right? So the architect said it was estimated it was going to cost, I don't know, $10 million, and all the bids come at, the lowest bid that comes back is $12 million, right? So, and the owner does not have $12 million. The owner only has, let's say, 11, right? So obviously you're over $1 million, and over what the owner can afford, and the owner cannot get any money. So so these are some of the options that the owner can do, which is kind of like, the owner can try to increase the budget. So you can say, okay, let me see if I can get more money. I'll take the 13 million. Let me see, okay, I got 10. Let me see if I can get 3 more. Just because all the bids obviously are coming back at 13, so there's nothing I can do about it, right? Or they can rebid the project. So they say, okay, you know what? Let me go pick 4 new contractors and rebid it and see what I get, right? So they can rebid it, and then C, which is the most common option, is incorporate revising the scope of quality of the work. So you go back and work with the architect or the engineer, and you value engineer the building, right? So you start taking things that are costly or can be replaced with cheaper or more economic or more economically within your building, right? So if you have, I don't know, if you have marble floors or granite counters, you say, okay, you know what, let's replace all the counters with laminate counters, right? That's obviously a lot cheaper. You got this nice terrazzo floor. Okay, let's go ahead and do VCT floor instead of terrazzo, because terrazzo is obviously more expensive. So you can value engineer the building. You can work with the architect, and the architect is not supposed to charge you extra for this stuff. So you as an architect cannot charge the owner more money to value engineer the building for the documents. And D, require the architect, like I said, to modify the documents. So C and D kind of go together. Require the architect to modify the documents without additional compensation, right, until the scope is reduced. So once you talk about all the stuff you're going to modify in order to build, in order to get the price down, then the architect has to go in and revise all the drawings accordingly without charging you extra. So that's kind of like, you as an architect kind of have to eat that up. Now, if the contract is different, that's typically per AIA document. So like if you modify the contract that says like, hey, any additional changes after bidding, I'm going to charge you for, then, then that's what it is. But traditionally, you're not supposed to charge to get that scope down. So then the other two answers are wrong. Require the architect to compensate the owner. That the architect's not going to pay the owner for, even if the architect was way off on his estimate. The architects are going to pay the owner to, for the additional budget and the bid, and then terminate the agreement without paying full for the bid, paying for the bid documents. So no, the owner cannot do that. The owner still has to pay you, even if you say, the owner cannot go like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna forget this. I'm not gonna do the project. I'm not gonna pay anybody. They still have to people still have to get paid, right? So they cannot just terminate the agreement without the architect getting paid. So the first four, A, B, C, and D, are kind of like the choices for the owner if his project is over budget. His or her project is over budget. And you as the architect, D is kind of the one that kind of hits you hard, because that's coming out of your own money, right? So out of your own, that's overhead. Now you have to modify these documents. I don't know how many hours it's going to take, but so that's typically where you want to have it. You want to get that bid that you estimate is close to what you think the bid. But the thing is that we as architects, we're not estimators, we're not contractors. So sometimes we work way off. So there's different ways to do that. You can hire an estimator, you can hire a construction manager that knows pricing. You can have those. So there's different alternatives that you as an owner can have to make sure you have that pricing more accurate, right? And so you're doing your design bid build, because sometimes people, it's kind of like eating with your eyes, right? You just see something that looks great, and you get a lot of it, and then you find out that you can't feel that in your stomach because you're too full. So you pretty much just eating with your eyes, and that's what happens sometimes. That you as an owner can just go crazy with expenses. All right. Number 9, according to Aia Document B101, the architect is responsible for which of the following activities during the construction phase. So again, that's one of the multiple the 3 that apply, right? So during the CA, right? After the building's been bid and it's under construction. So the answers for this one is A, B, and D, and I'm going to tell you why. So obviously, it's already in the contract. So let me tell you about the ones that are not right. So B, endeavoring to guard against defects of the work. That's the responsibility of the contractor. It means the methods of construction. That's you as an architect not supposed to be going on site and expecting like, hey, this stuff is not built right, or there's a hole here, it's a hole. That's the contractor's job. You don't do that. So that's not your job. I'm sorry. That was one of the right answers. What am I saying? Endeavoring to guard against defects in the work. So C, that's what I meant to say. C, conducting continuous on-site inspections. So let me take that back. I apologize. So I meant to say C, not B. C, conducting continuous on-site inspections. So you say you as an architect are supposed to be showing up on site randomly and just starting, calling out, doing site inspections. You have some site inspections that are built in the schedule, and and then you show up, and all you're doing is to make sure the work is being done according to the contract documents, not how stuff is getting built. Right? You're not going to tell the contractor, oh, you should not build that stuff that way. You should write this way. That's his job, his or her job. Yeah, and your job is to make sure that, like, hey, that door is supposed to be 8 feet tall. You're building at 6 foot tall. That's against the document. But then again, you don't tell the contractor right there and then to stop the work. You're supposed to put it in writing, right? So that's what you do. E, verifying that contracts construction methods are adequate. Let's say you don't do that. Like I said, you don't have the ability to stop work. So E would not be one of them. Sometimes if you're running the contract, you have the ability to stop the work. You can, but typically you as an architect do not. Only the owner can put a stop work order, and so you don't go there and check what the contractor is doing to make sure stuff is accurate. Like I said, that's his or her job. They're the ones with experience. They're the ones with insurance. And then F, like that's not correct either. Like assisting the contractor in the development of safety programs and reporting methods. No, big no. Like I say, your insurance, an architect's insurance does not cover that. So like I said, means and methods of construction are the responsibility of the contractor. So you're not going to sign to the contractor how to do how to keep people safe on the job, right? That's their responsibility. It's their insurance is covering that. The minute you go in there and start telling people what to do and they do it and something happens, then you're at fault, right? You're liable, right? So if you show up on site and you tell somebody, hey, don't do that because that's not safe, and they do it your way and something does happen to them, because you told them that, then, I'm not saying that if you see something that obviously is dangerous, you can't say something, but like I said, you go to the contractor and tell him that, and then suggest it or whatever, or you can put it in writing. If you go in there and you find that contractors violating all these work safety, committing a whole bunch of work safety violations, you go and put it in writing, and you notify the owner, put it in writing, and then you notify the contractor, and then that way that's the proper way of doing it. You don't go in there and just start directing people how to do their work on site, right? Or for those activities. So that's number 9. So that was A, B, and D. The right answers for that one. All right, the last one, matters affecting the basic legal rights and responsibility of the parties in the contract, which may bear from one party to another, should be handled in what? So the answer to this one is C, supplementary conditions. So stuff, stuff that bear from project to project, right? So you got some items sometimes that require specific stuff to be added to the contract, and this is per the AIA documents, right? So the AIA documents are in general, right? So you have to modify them accordingly, but sometimes there are projects that require additional items to be added to the contract. So then you will add it into the supplementary conditions, right? So stuff that's supplement to the contract, and then just that varies from project to project, right? So stuff that's unique to a specific project, and that does not go from the library to the school, or from the school to the auditorium of the building, right? So stuff that's special goes into the supplementary conditions, and that is listed in the AIA documents. That's where you would put that in. All right, stuff that's specific to that project, right? So 9 the bidding requirements, 9 the owner contractor agreement, 9 the general requirements, where you will put in the supplementary conditions. All right, any questions on number 10? So I said for number 9 was A, B, and D. That's what I said, A, B, and D. All right, so let's talk about any questions on these questions here. I said we got 3 minutes, so I'm going to briefly talk about some resources. So the best resource for this exam, which is like your best. There's other ones. Your best bet is to go to the NCAR a handbook for this exam, and in the back of it, you will see a list of what they call primary sources, which means like books and stuff that are derived from these questions. Secondary sources are kind of like these guys, right? Like you have your Amber book, you have your Black Spectacles, Young Architect. All these guys right here are what you call secondary sources or third-party sources. But your primary sources that this Architect Handbook of Professional Practice, that is your best bet. If you don't have that book, you can get that book. You can either rent it, you can buy it cheaply, or you can borrow it. It gets updated, but it's published by the AIA. And then right here, you can go online. I don't remember where I found this stuff, but right here, there's some areas that tell you specifically what areas within the book to study for, right? You can see it right here, right? So you don't necessarily have to read the entire book, right? Nobody wants to do that, but right here, so this gentleman named Kevin Greenland, he went down in it and broke down, the required life study and read for context items within the book. So you can see that once in read, it's something you definitely need to read. It will be a good idea for you to read within the book, and then stuff that's just for context and stuff that's like secondary, right? So this right here, you can go, you can Google that, and you can get it, or I can send you the slide if you want. But it basically tells you which chapters in the book to study for, right? Because you can read the entire book, but a lot of us are short on time. So, and obviously the AIA contract documents, you have to read those. You have to or at least understand them, right? So there's a lot of videos on YouTube that kind of break it down for you, so you don't have to, because like I said, this stuff is like reading the dictionary. It's not really, contracts are not really fun to read. But you're gonna see that according to the AIA 201, according to the B101, according to A102. So you definitely want to be, according to B101, according to BC 401, you definitely want to make sure that you are familiar, with definitely with the A201 general conditions, right? That's between all parties. That's not a contract. This is the general conditions. And the B101, the A101, right? The agreement between the owner and contractor. So you have to make sure that the contract, at least the content of it between all parties, right? Because I said that's going to come up a lot. Even right here in the test that we just went through, you saw according to the B101, according to the A201, several times. So if you're not familiar with the contract, you're just like going from your general knowledge, you're probably not going to pass. So like I say, if you don't feel like reading the whole thing, you can go on YouTube, and there's several channels that kind of break it down for you. Like they kind of just tell you the very important details and tell you what they go through each item in the contract, kind of tell you, put in layman's terms for you, in case you can't read contracts. We definitely have to make sure you know it. So this book right here, the Architect's Handbook of Professional Practice and the AIA documents are your primary sources. Make sure you get your hands on those. Your office might have a copy of the AIA documents. You can get a free copy of it since you're using it for study. A generic copy, you can get one. You can go to AIA website. You can just find them online, so you can get your hands on these documents fairly easy. Because you're not going to use them for an actual contract. You're just using them for study, so you can get free copies of them. But definitely the A101 standard form between owner and contractor right there at the top, and then the A201 was general conditions of the contract of construction, and then definitely the B101 form between the standard agreement between owner and architect. That's definitely three you should definitely be familiar with. The other ones, like the ones with agreement between consultant and architect, that might show up, but those three, the A101, A201, and B101 are the ones that you definitely want to be familiar with, right? Because those are the ones that are going to show up mostly on the exam. If you can tolerate reading those, do that. And then again, third-party sources, these are ones that I personally use myself. You got video, if you don't like reading and you just like watching graphics and stuff, Amber Book, Black Spectacles, those are subscription based. So you have to subscribe, so you have to pay a pretty penny for them. But I think the worst, in my opinion, Pluralsight is kind of like a general, you can learn about anything on Pluralsight. But they have a section of ARE as well. Then you got YourAnArchitect.com, and then you have a boot camp. I never got into boot camp, but some people say it's a good one. Then our RMSM Studio, that's somebody that I actually personally know. She has content in her website, so you can go there. Her name is Ramatuli Muhammad, Salah Muhammad. She's actually in the VANOMA board, and she has a website that she has posted stuff, and she has lectures there too. So I recommend using her stuff. And then if you like reading and taking and practice exams, all these guys have practice exams with them. Brightwood, PPI, ARE exam prep. ARE exam prep is really good. It's cheap. It's like $35, and it's not a subscription. Once you buy, you can use it forever, right? I think I can still use mine. Then you got designer hacks, ARE questions, Hyperfine, Ben Norkin, Hyperfine. He has questions, and we are ARE. So these are all ones that have reading material and practice tests. These ones on top typically just have Black Spectacles has practice exams. Like I said, it's a monthly subscription. I think they have discounts. If you're a NOMA member, they have discounts. If you're an AIA member, they have discounts. Your firm might buy it. Amber Book, they typically have discounts if you sign in with a group of 10 people or 3 or more. You have to go on their website and see. But they typically have typically discounts. But you have to pay typically over $100 for those subscriptions. But they have a ton of material, ton of content, ton of practice stuff you can use. And of course, the NCARF has, you know, their own resources. They have the handbook that they already 5.0 community. So, you know, it's like a chat room. You go in there, you cannot talk about the exam content itself. You can talk about, they typically have people talking about exam resources and new resources that come about. And they, also they have practice exams in there. So this is stuff that's all provided by NCARF, right? Updates, you know, provided programs, stuff that is free to you. You know, this stuff is free. All right, that is the end of it's 1:05, so it's after 1 hour. Is there any questions on any of the stuff we just talked about? Anybody have anything, any questions or anything like that?
Thank you, man. Great job explaining and breaking it down.
Oh, no, not a problem, man. Not a problem. Like I said, it's 1:05. Like I said, we start at 12:05. Yes, I'll be sending out the slides. These slides that I'll be sending them out later. If you were on here, I'll send it. If you want me to say, just put it in the chat room and I'll send it to you. So let me know if you want me to send it to see you, to send it out to me. Shoot me put a note on the chat and I'll send it to you specifically. I'm not gonna send it out to everyone, but yes, I will be doing another presentation next month. So the goal is to do once a month, one a month, and on a different thing. Next, I might do the practice management exam. This is practice management. I might do the practice management exam next month. Next month. So you know, I got a lot of stuff going on, so I can do one-on-one a month. All right. So like I say, if you want me to send it to you, just put it in the chat room. And again, thank you all for joining. I hope you know you have a great understanding about this exam. Yeah, the video will be posted on the VANOMA YouTube page. Not YouTube page, yeah, YouTube page. And that is brand new. So like I had to figure out where to find it. Somebody just created a YouTube page so we can post the videos up there. So once I figure out how to do that, I'll do that. I never loaded a video on YouTube, but somebody created a few videos up there that we have posted. So I'll put that up there. So yeah, that's what I'm recording it for. All right, guys. So that said, I appreciate you all joining, and hopefully you can join us next time. Like I said, shoot me a message if you want me to send this to you, and I'll send you the slides. So thank you all for joining. You have a rest of a good day and week.
Thanks, Joe. You too, man.
No problem. Thank you, guys.